Master.
There we go. Okay.
Dungeons & Dragons is a thrilling adventure, one we play together as Dungeon Master and players, but also an adventure itself. Now, we stand at the start of a new generation of Dungeons & Dragons, and today we're going to introduce some of what's in store for us as we embark on an initiative that we call 1D&D.
Okay, so first things first, I can't help but think, after some of the things that I've seen over the weekend, especially, I don't know how you guys feel about it, or should I say I don't know what you guys have heard of it. Any of you guys tried Spelljammer? Any of you guys bought Spelljammer and tried reading through that? I do not own it. The money that I can't justify buying it until I've heard people talk about it. What I will say is that everything that I've heard about it has been negative. It's set in space. You would expect that there would be some sort of ship-to-ship combat rules, like they might give you rules for like firing weapons from ship to ship. Obviously, gravity isn't going to be a factor in there, so there needs to be different rules than there might be, for instance, in Ghosts of Saltmarsh. We need to know how weapon rules are going to work. We need to know if the siege weapons on the ship, how far do they fire, how do they reload, all of those sorts of things. But they don't cover it in the book, apparently. In Spelljammer, apparently they do not cover any rules about how the weapons in the ship work. In fact, it's to the point where they basically encourage you to not use weapons. The way that they encourage it is to have your ships get so close that you just board each other and do a standard encounter fight. Seems kind of poop to me. Either way, this isn't really, I'm not really trying to talk about Spelljammer, but the point I'm trying to make is there's been a lot of disappointment with Spelljammer, I feel, and it has not been well received, and I cannot help but wonder if maybe they knew that was going to be the case. Maybe they knew they were putting shoddy effort into Spelljammer, and 1D&D has been announced to kind of build up the hype and hide, sweep the shittiness under the rug, build up the hype for Spelljammer. For 1D&D. All I'm going to say is, after seeing Spelljammer and reading what people have said, what a waste of money. What a waste of money. And I seriously hope that 1D&D is not going to go down the same route. I don't think it can. They're not. It doesn't feel like an entirely new edition. It feels like some adjusted rules and a blending of things that have came in things like Tasha's Cauldron, for instance, a blending of those sorts of things into the rule set to make it more modernized, shall we say. Either way, let's continue.
Growing up, I loved fantasy, but I never saw myself as the hero because I didn't think it was possible for someone who looked like me, who acted like me, who was like me, to be that hero.
We want to continue to reach out to folks who are interested in fantasy, who love storytelling, who enjoy spending time with their friends and creating these collective stories.
I mean, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about.
D&D's been around for 50 years, and there's very little that persists that long that becomes generational, that people can really just not only share, but literally hand down to their kids.
That's a really cool point, because it is a fact that D&D isn't like most games where, like, oh, the generation before me played this game and now I don't play it. It's like, let's say Pac-Man, for instance. People used to play Pac-Man. Do you guys know anyone who, like, goes out and openly just, like, spends a lot of time playing Pac-Man? It's like a generational thing, As gaming has evolved, the games that we play have changed. D&D, it's been pretty constant, If you're a big old nerd that likes role-playing games like me, you're probably going to play D&D. Or Pathfinder, but probably D&D, given the fact that it's had a massive resurgence in popularity over the past couple of years.
What we want to do is just add to that legacy.
We did a smart thing with 5th edition by listening to the fans, and what came out of that process was a system.
As much as I like Chris Perkins, I've got to say I'm not entirely sure that they did listen to the fans a lot of times. There has definitely been some content that has been released for 5th edition that has went down somewhat poorly. You can never please everyone. of course, yeah, they must have listened to the fan to some degree, but you can't please everyone, and maybe that's just to be expected. Certainly not a bad thing. Like I say, you can't please everyone.
That is stable, that is well-loved, that incorporates the best elements of earlier editions. Now that we have that, we are no longer in the position where we think of D&D as an addition. It's just D&D.
5th edition is a rule set that has worked for so many people and has brought so many...
I kind of feel as though that's got less to do with the game itself and more to do with how much money people are willing to spend. I think one of the biggest complaints, certainly for me, about 5th edition or D&D in general at this point, is that I don't have money to spend on every single book that comes out. And the way that they've been making D&D for the past couple of years, there's like a new fucking book every like 4 months or something like that. Like every 4 months a new book comes out or a new set or something like that. And it's like, I don't have the money to just go ahead and buy everything that comes out, you know? I think maybe that's got more to do with why we're changing from, or potentially changing, God knows. It might stay exactly the same. It might just be that this is a marketing ploy. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. But I feel like that's more of the driving factor behind why it's changing, or why they're saying it's changing from what we know and love now to a more collective system where content will be added almost like a video game, where things are patched in rather than added through books. Certainly one of the biggest complaints that I've had is that it's kind of hard to get people into the game when most of my friends, so to speak, people that I've played D&D with in the past, most of them come into D&D expecting it to be somewhat like a video game. So when you bring in this concept of, oh, there's some new content out for the game, and they say, oh, great, let's play it. It's like, oh, no, actually, we need to buy a whole new book if we want to play the content. Oh, okay. That's like the first thing that new players notice, or at least the fresh players that I've played with have noticed, shall we say. Right, let's continue.
New and exciting folks into the game, it's more important for us to continue to cultivate and respect and love what it is, you know, that the world has told us is working for them.
The sort of change you're going to see isn't about taking anything away from you, isn't about changing any of that stuff that you love. It's much more about giving you more options, giving you more choices you can make, more character types you can play, more magic spells you can cast.
Let's hope that's the case. Let's hope that's the case, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's like I've always said. I think I've made this point many times on stream when we've talked about D&D. You don't have to do anything that's in those books. You don't have to do what the rules say. You can do whatever you want. Wizards of the Coast don't run your game. You do. Do whatever the hell you want. What are you guys saying in chat? Let me see. Druid says, yeah, it is from uni. Also, fun fact, my uni requires first years to stay in dorms for 2 semesters. 2 semesters, huh? Normally, the way it works over here is you have like 2 years of... oh, no, actually, no. 1 year. Technically, you would have 1 year of living in like dormitories or university housing, and then the normal thing after that is to move into a house with like people that you've met at uni, and you find like a house share to move into together. I figure the more you're closer to the end of the game, the less time they've spent on testing those areas. Yeah, I agree, Voices. I think it shows. This is for Pathfinder we're talking about, obviously, not D&D, or not 1D&D. Let me see. Pathfinder 2nd edition, above 5th edition and Starfinder, and then Spelljammer right at the bottom. Oh, really? Really? I like 5th edition. I really, really enjoy the way 5th edition works. I haven't checked out 2nd edition Pathfinder. Let's see how 1D&D goes. I feel as though 1D&D has done very much what Pathfinder 1st edition did to D&D, in the sense that it took what... Pathfinder sort of took what D&D had and made it better. And going off what they're saying with 1D&D, I think the hope is very much that they'll take what Pathfinder 2nd edition had and they'll make it better. If that's the case, you can consider me a 1D&D fanboy, but if not, maybe I'll be checking out 2nd edition Pathfinder. Maybe I'll be doing that. You don't know, General and the rest of the table don't really enjoy anything that is up in space. Yeah, like anything sci-fi. Yeah, I don't know. Like, Spelljammer doesn't really appeal to me either. I kind of like fantasy, you know? And the idea of blending fantasy and sci-fi together, it's cool. It's a cool concept, but I don't have the nostalgia for Spelljammer in order to feel like I want to go back to it. As for Starfinder, I believe I actually own a couple of the digital copies of some of the manuals for Starfinder. I've taken a little bit of a look through them in the past. It seems interesting. It seems like it might be fun, but it's not a game that I would play on repeat, you know? It's not something I don't think I could do like a full Starfinder campaign. It just doesn't interest me in the same way that like fantasy tropes do. Let me see. So General has said she might check out Pathfinder 2nd edition if 1D&D is a fuck up in her eyes. I mean, this is the thing. I'm kind of, the way I'm thinking about it, maybe I'll check out 2nd edition Pathfinder. Maybe I'll just stick with 5th edition. I like 5th edition. I enjoy it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean? It depends on whether I can justify buying a whole new set of books and whatnot. Listen to the fans, but bullshit. Why the fuck is Monk so shit? This is what I mean, though. You can never please everyone, and they're never going to please everyone. So I'm just hoping that the choices they've made to please the fans, so to speak, are ones that I'm going to enjoy. And if they're not, I just won't play it. Simple as, you know? I just won't play it, or I won't use those rules. I'll make my own. Let me see. Paizo listens to the fans. I never know how to say the name. Is it Paizo or Paizo or Paizo? Like, I obviously know about Pathfinder, but as for the company that makes Pathfinder, I don't know how to pronounce the name of the company. As such, Monk and Ranger are awesome in Pathfinder 2nd edition. I've actually heard about Ranger being really, really well received for 2nd edition. I don't know anything about 2nd edition, really. Bar from the fact that 1D&D seems to take some elements of it and use those. Your reasoning was you're afraid of making monks too powerful, then why the hell did you add Twilight clerics or eloquence bards? You often still have to pay for extra video game content. Yeah, I suppose that was a bad example. I mean, as in a lot of games these days do have updates where it's free content that's added, and it adds a little bit to your game. It's not like a whole DLC, but it is content that's added, and it freshens the game up. You know, we see it with, I suppose, the examples that come to mind are like Fortnite with the content that they've added in, the skins and whatnot, although you do have to pay for the skins, don't you? So I suppose that's a bad example. I suppose Fall Guys is totally free, you know, the content that's added in there, things like that. Obviously tabletop's kind of a different ball game, isn't it, really? Don't let the rules rule over you. Rules are just guidelines that can be that you cannot follow. Exactly, 100%. For fuck's sake, my boyfriend gave the cat some tuna and didn't throw the wrapper away. Now the whole room smells of fish. Ding dang down. 2nd edition is harder to get into, but once you've got a feel for the rules, the game will flow even even easier than 5th edition. Huh. That's interesting. Because to me, Pathfinder has always catered to an audience that is much more willing to deal with micromanagement in combat and a much more in-depth sort of game than 5th edition D&D. You know, 5th edition D&D, I feel the perks of that was that it was streamlined, totally streamlined, so you had to roll as few dice as possible, realistically, or at least as few dice to determine if you're successful, and as many dice as you like for your damage. But yeah, I always thought that I didn't like sci-fi because I was only really exposed to fantasy stuff as a kid, but you love Star Wars and still generally avoid sci-fi? Yeah, I think so. I really love Star Wars, but I was introduced to that as a kid, so that could be why I love Star Wars. As for other sci-fi things, I don't have anything against sci-fi. Like, there's a few games that I enjoy that are sci-fi, you know, themed, but I don't really enjoy sci-fi as much as I enjoy fantasy. I think there's something, I don't know. There's probably a lot of reasons behind it, you know? There's probably a lot of reasons behind it. I think fantasy always just feels more familiar to me, I think it is what it is. I quite like playing archetype characters, but they tend to be underpowered too often. Yeah, I think we need to see some serious love and care paid to a couple of the classes in 1D&D. We need to see an improvement for Monk and Rangers for certain. I feel like Rangers need to have more scope to them because I don't think they've had love paid to them in 5th edition. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I feel like Rangers have not had the same care and love placed into them as a lot of the other classes. And I feel like more often than not, when someone plays Ranger, they're kind of limited with what they can actually do. And I think that, you know, going off what they've said in the trailer so far, they need to add scope to the game. They need to allow the players to do whatever the hell they want to do. It needs to be a rule set that is there for consideration and that doesn't limit you in your choices. We'll see. We'll see. Marius is not changing to 1D&D because he loves 5th edition so much. 5th edition is very, very good. If 1D&D doesn't improve enough elements, then I'm probably going to stick to 5th edition myself or check out 2nd edition Pathfinder. But yeah. If she doesn't like both Pathfinder 2nd edition or 1D&D, she might just stick to 5th edition. I mean, I feel like a lot of people stuck to the previous editions when 5th edition came out for a while, though, right? So, I mean, it might just be a slow sort of progression to 1D&D. It'll take time for them to refine it. Like, looking at the playtest content, it'll definitely take some time to refine it. Let's continue with this.
Basically, you know, we're very happy with the game the way it is today. We just want to build on that. We're revising the major core rulebooks that every player uses, the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Monster Manual.
One of my focuses, specifically, is the Dungeon Master's Guide. I'm going to make some structural changes to make it more friendly to new DMs.
When it comes to...
That's one of my biggest complaints. Being a fresh DM and looking in the Dungeon Master's Guide, it's not an easy learning curve, you know? And if there wasn't a plethora of people out there that are already playing D&D and hosting live D&D shows online, I think fresh DMs would have a real fucking hard time, you know? There are some things that you just really have to make up on the fly that aren't, you know, given to you or presented well or straightforward in the DMG. I guarantee there will be an obscene amount of monks that just so happen to have the sailor background in 1D&D. I would be guilty of that as well if I even got to be a player. I think so, and I think definitely it's like I said in the Discord. I think we're gonna get a lot of dwarven characters as well now, thanks to Tremor Sense that you pointed out, Andor. I think we're gonna get a lot of bullshitty like wise, majestic lone wolf warriors that wander into town. They are blind, they have no sight, and they just wander into town, bandana around their eyes, some sort of samurai-esque character that just uses tremor sense in combat. It seems so bullshitty, that tremor sense rule, but yeah. Have you ever tried the Star Wars system from Fantasy Flight? It starts with the book Edge of the Empire. I looked into Edge of the Empire, I think, but I don't own any of the content. I did look into Star Wars 5th edition. Star Wars 5th edition was it seemed okay, but I think just reskinning 5th edition D&D to Star Wars it doesn't really work to me, you know? Doesn't really work. Like, there was talks about a Lord of the Rings 5th edition supplement or something like that, I believe, a couple months back. And if you want to play a Lord of the Rings fantasy game, tabletop game, should I say, go play the Lord of the Rings official tabletop game. It looks pretty fun. The starter set seems to be pretty cool. I'm thinking about getting that at some point and trying it. But yeah, as for Star Wars 5th edition, no, I looked into that and I didn't think much of it. As for Edge of the Empire, haven't looked enough into it, and I don't know if as much as I love Star Wars, I don't know if I'd want to host a Star Wars TTRPG. I don't know. It's something for me to think about, I suppose. There's a lot of tabletop games that I've been seeing for years I want to try, I want to get into. And it's a simple case of how much time do I have that I can put into these hobbies to actually enjoy them. And I think I have to be really picky with what I do. In my personal experience, fresh DMs learn how to DM by playing mini sessions as a player. I did not have that scenario at all. I went straight into DMing, and I think by playing as a player, that definitely gives you a leg up. I think that the point that I want to make, though, is that as someone who doesn't have that sort of experience and isn't able to play as a player, the DMG is not really... It shouldn't be called the Dungeon Master's Guide, you know? DMG makes it sound as though it's something that fresh DMs can pick up and it's a guide for them to host their game. in reality, it's more of a supplement, I feel, that helps with world building. It helps with hosting your game. It gives you little ideas that you could put into your game, you know, you could implement into the game. But I don't really think it's a guide as such. I feel like maybe the new starter set well, no, I think it's been released now in America, hasn't it? I don't think we've got it over here yet. But I think the new starter set seems to do a pretty good job of that, although it seems to be a little bit bare bones, you know, not too much content in it. But yeah, certainly more. I would say that the new starter set, going off of what I've seen, seems to offer fresh DMs and fresh players a much better introduction to the game. However, the actual content of the adventure and the supplement itself doesn't seem to be as good or as much of value for money as, for instance, Lost Mine of Phandelver or Dragon of Icespire Peak. Speaking of which, we're going to get an entire campaign crafted out of Lost Mine of Phandelver. Apparently that's coming out next year, I think, 2023, I believe. Or maybe it's this year. Maybe it's the end of this year. I think it's next year. I think it's spring next year, but I could be wrong. It actually might talk about that in this video, so we'll continue watching this.
Art for D&D, it's about as versatile as our players. We want to show that the person you are can appear in the worlds of Dungeons and Dragons.
That's what 2024 holds, is this promise of getting new versions of the books that are the game you know.
One thing I want to quickly cover, I feel like we're 2.5 minutes into the video, and so far the focus seems to have been every other person that's spoken. One person talks about some of the things they want to change, and then someone talks about something else. Every other person that's talking about something else seems to be focusing on playing themselves in the game, talking about how they want to see themselves represented in the game. And whilst I am 100% behind the idea of having people seeing people like them, whether it's because of their race, their gender, their cultural background, I'm fully up for representation. I think it's a great thing to see. I think it's one of the ways that we actually can learn from each other is by seeing representation in video games, in movies and whatnot. What I'm not really certain about is the fact that that's one of the marketing points, you know, like this is an announcement trailer, this is the world reveal. Should we not be talking more about like what's going to be changed, what's going to be new in the game, what are you going to give us as players and DMs alike, what are we going to be able to play with? But it's more about representation. I mean, I don't know, I'm a straight white guy. Have there been big arguments about representation in Dungeons and Dragons recently? I mean, I honestly don't know. I wasn't aware of that being an issue. What I will say is that it's a fantasy game with fantasy races, and I'm all for representation, but I don't really know how someone can talk about seeing themselves represented in a video game when let's say they're a Scottish woman, and they want to see representation of Scottish women in Dungeons and Dragons, and then they play like a centaur or a fairy or an elf. It doesn't really compute to me. I don't really think it's a selling point. I think people will always look, in a fantasy game, they will always look to play something that's interesting to them. Give them interesting races with interesting features. Give them good classes that are fun to play. That's the selling point. That's the selling point. Representation, that comes later. That comes later, I think. You know? I think representation is more often than not dictated by your DM. If your DM's created a world that is representative of everyone around the table, that's what's important. But as for the game being offering representation, I think let's maybe focus on the features and what we're going to offer the players, and then allow them to make the world that they play in offer as much representation as they want. But let's not make it a selling point. Let's keep it about the game.
But reflect where the game is presently.
1D&D has 3 pillars, and one is the rule set, which is built on the base of 5th edition, but updated.
We're building upon the rules that have been established, the storytelling, and expanding our world and our rules.
So a lot of people are going to be really happy about this because it's what they know and love, but better.
All the adventures and supplements that have been released in the past 10 years will still be playable with the new evolution of D&D.
That's one of the things I was excited about.
Which is the base of our digital.
Being able to have backwards compatibility with adventures that we've already played and that we already love, or maybe we own but we haven't got around to playing yet. That's really exciting. I'm all for representation, says Zeta, but making that the main point of the announcement trailer, like, really? Again, it's like, I don't know. It's one of these very complicated things that I think comes down to the players and the DM more than the company themselves. If they offer the foundations to build upon for representation, then that's a great thing to do, and certainly something they should discuss with the audience. But I don't think it should be one of the main points of the reveal trailer. Let's give us some information about the game, and then we'll go from there. Disability is another big representation product. They did make the combat wheelchair specifically for that purpose, so I think they want to keep showing that representation matters to them, but I agree, it seems slightly out of place for a reveal like this. Yeah, I mean, so for those of you who don't know, Betty has a disability, but I can guarantee you whenever she looks to play a character, she doesn't care about whether the character is disabled or not, and everyone's going to be different. It's nice to have representation, but I think from her point of view, she's much more focused on if the game's fun than if there's representation. Representation has to be taken into account by the players at the table and the DM that is hosting. It's great to see that they're offering it. It's great to see that they want to show that they're understanding of some of the issues with the game, or some of the issues with representation within the game, but I don't think it should be part of the world reveal. I think we should be seeing more about what's changing, because so far, let's be honest guys, so far the only thing we've heard is it's going to be 5th edition but better. Okay, explain it to me. Explain it to me. You've said it's 5th edition but better. You've said adventures will be backwards compatible. Okay, adventures are going to be backwards compatible. That seems fun. I can get behind that. That's great. That's really exciting for me. But could you maybe tell me more about that? Could you maybe explain how that's going to work?
Tools and assists for players in DM. Currently, players are cobbling together all kinds of different apps and websites to have a true integrated D&D experience. What we want to do is actually just provide all the tools that the players need to play themselves in one space.
Right now with the acquisition,
you can view that as they're intending it, I feel, which is they want to make ease of access for all players and DMs alike. Or you could view it as them trying to have an iron fist around their content. So, i.e., we will see less apps, less community content that is produced for the game, and we will see more of a stranglehold on the game and its content by Wizards of the Coast. It could go either way. I certainly hope that they still allow community content and they still welcome it into the D&D family, so to speak. But part of me can't help but feel like there's been a lot of rumblings about homebrew content and whether or not we're going to have as much freedom going forwards. We'll see. It remains to be seen, right? Give us the new rules, lore. Oh, don't even get me started on the lore. There's some things in there that I think are just silly. Also, I mean, lore doesn't... I don't care so much about lore purely because I've never played D&D using the lore that they give me. Every time I host a campaign, it's from my mind. The way that the different creatures of the world interact, the cultures that are present, the empires that have been founded and fallen, the history of the world, the religions, the gods that are present or not present, the evil that exists in the world, that comes from my head, and I don't use the books for that. And I never have done, and I probably never will, because I don't want to play by their rules. I want to play with my world. I don't want to play with the Wizards of the Coast world. But yeah, let's see how this goes. That's nice, but please don't delete things that already exist. That's a good point. I mean, we've already seen some of the content on D&D Beyond getting removed unless you already own it, which is a real fucking shame. A real shame. There is a 1 hour long interview type video as well that does go into the deeper details for the changes, but still doesn't cover all that's in the document though. Have you seen that one, Cass? I don't think I have. I won't watch that one on stream, because if I do a 1 hour interview video on stream, we'll be here for like 5 hours of D&D interview content. But could you maybe send me a link to that, Andor, in the Discord if possible? If not, don't worry about it. I'm sure I'll find it easily enough. But I'd really appreciate it if you have it on hand. Hax, hello, good day to you. I hope you're doing wonderfully today. I'm doing pretty damn well. We're going over the one D&D world reveal trailer. I'm late to the party as usual, but we're going over it, and then we're going to dive into some Pathfinder. Anyway, let's continue with this.
Of D&D Beyond, we've already started to dip our toe into digital, and it was a fantastic partnership that we have going, but we can add more.
Digital physical bundles is something that we've wanted to do for a long time, and now that D&D...
Let's pause right there. Have you guys seen the digital physical bundles they're offering? Have you seen the pricing? The digital physical bundles, to me, the big exciting thing about digital physical bundles that the community have been asking for is the fact of, oh, well, I'd like to be able to buy the physical book, but then maybe get access to the content on D&D Beyond as well. Like, that would be pretty cool. Could we see that? They've taken that request, and it seems as though, going off the pricing that I've seen listed for some of the content that they've announced, they've taken that and they've said, okay, we'll make a bundle. You can have both the physical copy and the digital copy. But the pricing will be basically the same. It's the same price as buying the physical copy and the digital copy separately. It's like the same price, I'm fairly certain. So they've not offered, like, it's not like there's a reduced pricing for buying a bundle. And I actually discussed this when I was watching the live stream. I discussed this in chat on YouTube with some people there, and one of the moderators actually got in on the conversation and was trying to make the point that, well, bundle doesn't mean discounted price. No, it doesn't. But bundle generally makes me think of a set of items bundled together for a price that is sort of exclusive to that, you know, an exclusive bundle price. That's how I think of it. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe I shouldn't think like that. But when I think bundle, I think, okay, items put together, and the price is representative of the bundle as opposed to the two individual items. That's not what they're doing. That's not what they're doing. And going off my discussion with that moderator, it seems as though they do not get it. I think at the end of the day, that mod was just trying to do their job in keeping things loyal to Wizards of the Coast, perhaps. But yeah, it was, I don't know. There was a lot of toxicity going on in chat, I felt. I think some things definitely got personal. It definitely got a little bit heated, as it sometimes does. And I don't know. I think people need to maybe take a look at the bigger picture and not make things personal. It's okay for us to dislike one thing. It's okay for us to love another thing. But, like, I don't know. I'm disappointed with the bundle pricing. It felt a bit silly.
Beyond is part of our family. It's finally something we can do. Your content is available anywhere you want it, and you have those physical books, but you've got nice portable versions that you can access through your phone or through
as long
your
as you'll buy them
tablet or
both
through your other device.
Then our future-facing aspect of this is the D&D Digital, which will become a full Playspace.
This
for you to have experiences that are more immersive. Right now we're in early development of our digital experience. We can play a game, roll some dice, see the miniatures moving around in a 3D play space, but that's just the core of it.
Amazing. I love it. I think it's great. What I don't want to see, I really do not want to see them come out and say, oh, you can only use the maps that we make. You can't make your own maps. I want a map editor. I want to be able to add my maps in there. I do not want to get shoehorned into only being able to play Wizards of the Coast content. How many people out there play specifically just Wizards of the Coast content? Does nobody do homebrew campaigns? Does nobody write their own stories and have their own maps? Please give us the ability to create our own maps, make our own content usable in this, and I'm totally on board with that. I am totally on board with that. I think I would even consider paying a subscription for that service. But if not, then chances are, if I wanted to do something like that, there are plenty of map making tools out there that I could use that I've already purchased for a set price, or that I could easily purchase. Like, for instance, there's one on Steam. Do any of you guys know what I'm talking about? There's one on Steam that looks a lot like that. It actually allows you to make the maps inside it. You know, you can make custom maps. I hope that's the route they go down. If they don't, I think it's going to be silly, and I don't think people are going to take it up. You know, why would you pay for something that is only going to let you use what? Why would you pay for something or pay for access to a virtual tabletop that you then have to buy modules for and enabled in order to actually make use of it? If you have the money to do that, then good for you. But I certainly do not have the money to either pay for a subscription or buy a virtual tabletop. And then in order to actually use it, I have to buy every adventure that I want to play and put it in there. I can't just make my own maps. And I think that's the way they're going to go, because realistically, if they allowed people to make their own maps, what's to stop people from making copies of the maps that exist in adventures already? In which case, people wouldn't need to buy the adventures to play those maps. It's probably going to happen. I feel like that's what I feel anyways. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys disagree. If you do, feel free to say so. This isn't, you know, this isn't an argument. This is a discussion, I suppose, is the way of phrasing it. Let me see. Oh, thank you, Andor. Linked in the Discord. Like I said, if you read the Unearthed Arcana already, the only thing you'll learn is that the two devs' opinion. Oh, is the two devs' opinions? It's nice to hear devs' opinions. It'll be nice to like sort of sit through that. But I mean, I've taken glances at it. I've read through some of it significantly, but I have yet to kind of go through with my notebook and make exact notes of what I like and what I don't like, which is something I'll probably do. Maybe I'll make that into a YouTube video, like I said earlier, or maybe I'll do it on stream at some point. Who knows? A bundle should represent value for money. Whenever something is bundled together, it's generally cheaper than purchasing the same item separately. I 100% agree, and I think that the fact that that isn't the case is very greedy. Very greedy. The argument that was made by the moderator that I spoke with, or the community mod, should I say, that I spoke with, was that, well, people have to, you know, you have to take the physical content and then implement it into D&D Beyond. People need to be paid for that. Do you not think that, like, we should pay our staff to copy the content from the physical manuals onto online? Well, yeah, I do think that they should be paid for their time and for their job, but I don't think that the pricing for the physical copy is the same as the digital copy. Let's think about the pricing system. Let's say you buy a physical copy for $25, $30, let's say. Okay, well, what's that $30 covering? Well, it's covering the fact that the book has actually been printed. It's a physical item. It's also covering the fact that those have been written out by people. People have had to spend time writing those rules out, writing those adventures out, coming up with things. We have the artists that need to be paid as well for everything that goes into the books. And then it has to be distributed. So we're covering all those charges. What are we paying for D&D Beyond? The art's already done. The adventure's already written. We don't have distribution to worry about. It's all digital. Maybe there are some distribution charges, but nowhere near as high as physical copies, I would imagine. What else is there? Well, I suppose there's probably going to be the time that's needs to be taken to copy it from physical into manual and make that work. But the production time for a physical book is going to be longer than the production time for a digital copy, and that isn't going to be reflected. You're basically going to be paying the same price that you pay now, but times 2. Doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't make sense at all. I told my boyfriend who uses wheelchair about the combat wheelchair, and he said that's so dumb. I think that it's good that they've put it in, because there are going to be people out there that see that and think, that's kind of cool. I'm glad that they've done that. That's representation, and they get on board with that. There are going to be other people that say that like, for instance, like your boyfriend who does use a wheelchair, that will see that and say, that is so dumb. At the end of the day, it's a simple case of, well, if you like it, put it in your game. If you don't like it, keep it out of your game. But they're never going to please everybody. And that's why I think it's so complicated talking about things like representation within a tabletop game, especially one like D&D. And that's why I'm sort of confused as to why they made that one of the main points of their, or so far they seem to have made it one of the main points of the reveal trailer. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what they decide to do. For me, Wizards of the Coast seem very greedy and arrogant, but it was like this for a long time. Paizo feels like an anti-Wizards of the Coast from this point of view. Huh. Again, I don't know enough about Paizo to give a valid sort of opinion, so to speak, and I don't really want to make an uninformed opinion or announce an uninformed opinion if I can help it. But you say that they're kind of like the complete opposite of Wizards of the Coast. That seems interesting. I will say I have kind of looked. I believe someone, I don't know if it's the official company or not, but I believe they're thinking of making, or they are in the works, or in the process of creating a digital supplement for Pathfinder in the same way that D&D Beyond came about for D&D. I would definitely be more comfortable looking into Pathfinder digitally rather than having to buy loads of books for it. For me, that would just be a lot easier. It would probably give me a little bit more freedom in terms of whether I decide, I'm going to play it or not. Tailspire is the thing. Oh yes, Tailspire, that's it. Yeah, I think it was on discount a little while ago, but I didn't buy it because personally I like making my own maps with Dungeon Draft, or I like drawing my own maps digitally. I love the idea of a virtual tabletop, but I don't know. We'll see what 1D&D does. If their virtual tabletop is reasonable, then maybe I'll give that a go. I find it outrageous that if I want to play on D&D Beyond as a goblin, I have to buy the race for €3. Oh, because Goblin was introduced. Well, Goblin was introduced in one of the Guide to Monsters, I believe. And if I have a physical copy of a rulebook, I have to re-buy it on D&D Beyond. Outrageous, and it's usually the same place. So here's the thing: I think if they're gonna do bundles, I certainly think that we probably should pay for digital and physical. There needs to be payment, because at the end of the day, they are having to pay someone to implement the physical rules and adventure and whatnot into a digital environment. So someone needs to be paid for that. But there's no way it costs them as much to put it on D&D Beyond as it does to put it into a physical book and then release the physical book. There's no way. So I think the pricing maybe should represent that. Maybe rather, let's say it costs £30 for a book, and it's £30 now for physical, and it's let's say dollars, because everyone prefers dollars, right? Let's say it's $30 physical, $30 digital as it stands at the minute, and let's say the bundle is priced at $60. So basically, you're paying the exact same price as you would if you bought them separately. I think instead, maybe it would make more sense for it to be like a bundle. Let's say the bundle says $30 for the physical book. Fair, reasonable. Let's say more like $15, $20, maybe $18 as a nice middle ground. $18 for the digital copy. So what are we looking at there? $48. $48 for a bundle. That seems reasonable. I could get behind paying $48 for a bundle. That's like £45 roughly, something like that. I think that's reasonable pricing. Someone needs to get paid for the implementation of taking it from physical to digital, but I don't expect to pay full price for that unless I'm solely using digital copies, which I have to say I use more digital copies than physical these days. I would love to have all the books back there. How many books do I own now? I own 2. I own a starter set. I own an essentials kit. I own the DMG. I own the Player's Handbook. I own the Monster Manual. I have the Critical Role Taldore. Taldore Reborn book. I have some Lazy DM books on there as well. But then most of it's on digital because it's just easier for me personally. But it would be really nice to have them back there. It would be really nice to buy a bundle and get the book and the digital for a decent price. Either way. They're a pretty good big company, and their game is very huge compared to other TTRPG games. Seeing this greed and arrogance is somewhat expected in my point of view. Definitely to some degree, but given that more and more of the team that make up Wizards of the Coast seem to be coming from the community themselves as the years progress, we should be seeing less of it, surely. We should be seeing less of it. That's outrageous. It's pure greed. Exactly. Any company that has a big hold on their respective markets, yeah, it's a monopoly. It's a monopoly. And that's what I was talking about before, earlier on. You know, them sort of being able to push out homebrew content and whatnot, and make it more difficult to make your own content and sell it. Part of the monopoly. That's one of the reasons I went with PF2 and Foundry VTT. Paizo gave Foundry VTT the green light to implement their up-to-date rule set, and as a DM I only need to pay once for Foundry, and I can play whatever system they support. 20 plus systems. As a player, I don't pay anything that I don't need to download anything. So I believe Foundry VTT, Foundry Virtual Tabletop, you can buy that on Steam, I believe, right? And I've seen, I want to say Icarus Games, possibly Icarus Games. Is that his name? On YouTube? On the YouTubes? Icarus Games, guys. Icarus Games. I believe I saw him discuss Virtual Tabletop. Foundry Virtual Tabletop. And he was a big supporter of it. And he made some very, very good points. And I think maybe I think the biggest hurdle for me is ease of access and ease of use. And maybe I would justify paying for Foundry and buying the content or whatever for D&D, this is, if I knew that I was definitely going to be able to have ease of access to it and I was going to be able to use it in every game that I play, but it just might not be the case, so that's why I've stayed away from virtual tabletops. I found out fairly early in my experience with TTRPGs that I much prefer having all my tools digital rather than physical. It's nice to have them because they're pretty. It's nice to have them physical because they're pretty and they look nice. But I've always found that digital has been more just easily accessible to me. It's something I can use on the fly without having to carry loads of books. You know, I can just carry a little tablet or a laptop or whatever with me. It's always worked better that way. It's always worked better. Especially with some of the, like, I use Owlbear Rodeo, sorry, not Owlcat. Owlbear Rodeo. I use that for my maps. I import all of my created maps into that, and then we roll on the table, and we have a virtual map for us to play with. Right, let's continue. Again, looks very exciting. Looks very cool.
For several reasons.
Reason number one, make it look dope. That's the first thing. Number two is take care of the lazy DM, because we're all lazy DMs. Ease of use means being able to access all of the tools that you need in order to get the adventure started. So we use the camera technique called tilt shift. It actually makes things look small. We want to make sure.
I don't know why that bothered me so much, but what is the point he's making?
We use the camera technique.
No, that's not far enough back.
Because we're all lazy DMs.
Yeah,
Ease of use means being able to access all of the tools that you need in order to get the adventure started. So
you've explained to me what ease of use means. Okay.
We use the camera technique called tilt shift. It actually makes things look small. We want to make sure that the experience for you is that you're experiencing a miniature set.
The tilt shift camera was really chosen so that people understood that this wasn't a video game, but it is a digital experience.
If you get far enough into playing D&D so that you're actually at a virtual tabletop with a group of friends and someone is hosting a session, you've made your character, you're at the first session of the adventure, I feel like you know at that point it's not a video game. Again, I don't know what it is, guys. It just feels as though the marketing points, the points that they're making to market this, market everything that they've said so far, seems to be a bit misaligned. Like, maybe it would have been better if, rather than talking about the fact that they're trying to make, rather than explaining what ease of use is to me, rather than talking about the fact that it's not a video game, maybe actually tell me how it works. Are they going to tell us how it works? Are they going to show us like a demo or something, rather than just, you know, talking about what ease of access is?
More options for character customization. You can actually change the features, do what you want with it. And you're going to use this miniature approach to tell stories just like you do in physical tabletop.
To have your character live.
And definitely more freedom, right? Like if you can edit those virtual minis,
there, but I'm not limited.
You can make them the villain in your story. If your villain has, I don't know, like from what they're saying there, it makes it sound like, let's say your villain has big bushy mutton chops. Okay, there's a miniature in the game that looks somewhat like my villain. Let's add some big bushy mutton chops to them. He doesn't use a great axe, he uses a great sword. Okay, let me change that in there. That's cool, I'm behind that. I just feel like the sort of info that they're providing is somewhat disjointed.
Give you a pre-made campaign from us that has an exciting
Wait.
with a pre-made campaign from us.
I didn't like the sound of that.
There, but I'm not limited by the digital technology.
We might give you a pre-made campaign from us that
Pre-made campaign, huh? What was that I was saying earlier about not wanting to be stuck with just your content? Please, 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 please tell me that does not mean that they are just going to give us pre-made content. Please allow us to make our own battle maps.
It has an exciting castle or keep with a dungeon inside of it, exciting NPCs, but then you're going to be able to take this playset, take it apart, and build your own. We're going to have a really robust tool for you to be able to create your own dungeon.
That's all I needed to hear.
This is just the start of one D&D, and we are relying on all of you to help us out and figure out that future together.
Wonderful.
What you're going to be able to see
Wonderful.
starting in August is a steady...
But how long until they find people that are making official content maps as homebrew and preventing and preventing them from getting money from sales, you know? Like if you're gonna buy adventure content in order to use it in that, how long is it going to take before they realize, ooh, some people aren't actually paying for the content, they're just looking online to see what the maps look like and then remaking them in the virtual tabletop? Ooh, I feel like they might crank down hard on that, or crack down, should I say, hard on that. Have you seen Tailspire on Steam? Yeah, I was just talking about that before. Andor pointed it out. That was what I was talking about earlier on. In terms of like, I knew there was something like this on Steam already, but I couldn't remember what it was called. And Andor pointed out it's Tailspire. Yeah, I have seen it, and it looks really fucking good. I hope it's basically an official. It would be enough for me if this was just an official version of Tailspire, you know, with some nice goodies thrown in. That would be enough for me.
Release
Tailspire looks really good.
Of these playtest packages where you'll be able to engage with key aspects of the game, provide us with feedback that then we will digest, process, interpret, analyze, and then act upon.
Really, it's you shaping the next generation.
Let's hope they do that. Let's hope that they do take the feedback that we give them, because there will no doubt be a lot of people giving feedback. I think I myself am probably going to get a little game, a little adventure sorted where we can use the rule set that is there at the minute, and we can see how it goes. And I can maybe give some feedback on that, or get people from my table to give them feedback on that. Let's hope that they actually take into account what people are saying and they do make those changes. That remains to be seen. Fingers crossed, guys. Fingers crossed. This could be amazing, or it could be a desperate attempt to make more money. We'll see.
Of Dungeons and Dragons, and we want to hear exactly what you have to say.
Playtesting starts today. Go to dndbeyond.com, download the playtest packet, and get ready to let us know where you'd like this next leg of the adventure to go.
Well, there you have it, guys. Head over and get the playtest content and see what it's like. Tell me what you think of it. You know, put some thoughts in the Discord, maybe. My group tried it a few times. It's awesome. It does not have full support for 5e rules, but who knows? In time it might. It has great potential. I don't know if it will have support for 5e rules. If they're making their own virtual tabletop now, I don't think they're going to start allowing people to implement 5e rules into their own virtual tabletops. Maybe that's the cynic inside me, but yeah, I don't see that happening. But even without implementation of the rules, just being able to use the maps themselves, and you know, another thing that's really nice, I believe Tailspire does this. I'm fairly certain it does. But having what's the official wording for it? Maybe you guys can help me out. Where you move your tokens on the virtual tabletop, and it unveils or reveals the fog of war as you move your tokens. There's a proper name for it. I can't think for the life of me what they actually term it as or what they phrase it as. But yeah, the fact, I believe Tailspire has that built in, and that is incredibly exciting to me. I hope they have the same thing built in here. I hope you can make massive dungeons. I hope you can make enormous dungeons like some of the ones that we saw in Tales from the Yawning Portal, and you can make them that large, and you can have Fog of War on there, and you can have it be revealed as you move your tokens. I am sure they will do that, because why wouldn't they? Why would they not include that as a feature? Why would they not include that as a feature? And this is the part of the video that in like 12 months time, when they haven't included it as a feature, people clip and they put some of that music in, you know, the that's it. Vision system. Is that what it's called? Is it just like the vision system? Foundry VTT has this implemented, and it even takes into account oh, that's cool. That's very cool. Jeez. So guys, going off what Voices is saying here, check out Foundry VTT. It sounds very cool. It sounds very cool. I might have to check out the pricing for it, and maybe have a little... If it's the sort of thing where I could check out the pricing and it isn't too expensive, then maybe I would try it out sometime. You know, even if I don't use it in my game, it might be nice to kind of take a look at it and see what, you know, features it offers. But either way, let's go ahead and... Shall we maybe play some Pathfinder? Would you guys like that? Should I do that now? I think I've kind of given my thoughts on that, you know. We're an hour in, and I've just finished talking about D&D. So that was a big old D&D rant, guys. Or not a rant, a discussion, I suppose. It wasn't one of the usual rants, of which there are